The shuttle touched down on Prime just as the twin suns dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of crimson and gold. Danny Cole tightened his grip on his travel bag and took his first step onto alien soil. The air felt lighter than Earth's, cooler, carrying a scent that reminded him of rain mixed with unfamiliar flowers. It was beautiful and unsettling. Ahead of him rose the Imperial Palace. No image, no hologram, no official briefing had prepared him for its scale. The structure towered into the sky, like a monument carved from glass and silver steel. Spires stretched upward as if trying to pierce the heavens, while translucent bridges connected them in elegant arcs. Light shimmered across its surface, reflecting the dying suns like a living thing. Danny swallowed hard. So this is where I'm supposed to belong for the next year. A figure waited near the landing platform, tall, impossibly tall. The alien stood nearly 8 feet high, with silver-blue skin and 4 powerful arms crossed over his chest. His golden eyes examined Danny with open disinterest, like a scientist studying a lesser life form. "You are the human security observer," the alien said flatly. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Danny replied, forcing calm into his voice. "Danny Cole, former Marine." The alien didn't respond to the introduction. He simply turned and began walking toward the palace. Danny followed. Inside, the palace was even more overwhelming. The ceilings stretched so high they vanished into mist. Floating crystal lights drifted through the air without chains or supports, glowing softly in shades of blue and violet. Nobles passed by wearing flowing ceremonial robes, their movements graceful, their conversations quiet and refined. None of them looked at Danny. It wasn't hostility. It was worse. Indifference. The alien official led him through a maze of corridors before stopping at a small chamber near the outer edge of the throne complex. "These are your quarters," he said. "You will report to the Imperial Commander at dawn. Until then, do not wander, do not touch anything, and do not speak unless spoken to." Then he left. Danny sat on the edge of the bed, which was clearly designed for a body twice his size and shaped nothing like a human spine. He exhaled slowly. Humanity had joined the Galactic Coalition only 5 years ago. Compared to civilizations that measured history in tens of thousands of years, humans were infants, loud, emotional, and dangerously unpredictable. This empire was ancient, powerful, proud, and Danny Cole was here as a gesture of goodwill. That's what the diplomats called it. In truth, he knew what he was, a symbol, a harmless one. The next morning, he stood before the Imperial Commander. The alien warrior was larger than the official from the landing pad, his body marked with deep scars that told stories of countless battles. He wore ceremonial armor that gleamed like polished silver, and his presence filled the room like gravity. "So," the commander said, slowly circling Danny, "you are the human." Danny stood straight. "Yes, sir. I'm told you were a soldier on your world. I served in Earth's military." The commander made a low sound that might have been laughter. "Your entire species occupies a single planet. We rule over hundreds of systems. Your combined forces would not survive an hour against one of our fleets." He stopped directly in front of Danny and leaned down until their faces were inches apart. "You are here because the Empress wishes to appear generous to lesser species," the commander said coldly. "Nothing more. Remember your place." Danny met his gaze without blinking. "Understood, Commander." Something flickered in those golden eyes. Surprise. Perhaps. "You will stand guard near the throne during court sessions," the commander continued. "You will not speak. You will not interfere. You will stand still and look decorative." "Yes, Commander." And just like that, Danny Cole became part of the Imperial Court. Every day, he stood near the massive doors of the throne room, silent and watchful. He learned quickly how power shifted in subtle gestures, how smiles could hide threats, how silence could be louder than words. He noticed the factions forming beneath the polished surface. Traditionalists clinging to old laws, reformists pushing for change, noble families playing careful games of loyalty. And at the center of it all sat the Empress. She was young by imperial standards, barely into adulthood, too young to rule something this vast. Her mother had died suddenly, leaving her alone on the throne. The whispers followed her everywhere. Too soft, too inexperienced, too weak. But Danny saw something else. He saw a ruler who listened, who asked questions no one expected, who carried the weight of an empire on her shoulders without letting it crush her. One afternoon, during a long court session, her silver eyes drifted toward him. "You are the human," she said. Danny bowed his head. "Yes, your majesty." "I've noticed you watch everything," she continued. "Why do humans observe so closely?" Danny considered his answer carefully. "Because where I come from, danger doesn't announce itself. If you don't see it early, you don't survive." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. That night, alone in his quarters, Danny couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The palace was beautiful. Perfect. Too perfect. And when his communicator intercepted a fragmented coded transmission, filled with military terminology and attack references, Danny knew his instincts were right. Something was coming. And no one here would listen to a human. Until it was far too late. The palace never truly slept. Even in the deepest hours of the artificial night cycle, Danny Cole could hear it breathing. Soft hums of energy conduits and walls. Distant footsteps of patrols. The low vibration machines older than human civilization. Lying on the oversized bed in his quarters, Danny stared at the ceiling and replayed the intercepted transmission again and again. Fragments, broken phrases, military terminology, not enough to accuse, too much to ignore. By the time the lights brightened to signal morning, Danny had already made his decision. If the Imperial Guard would not listen to him, he would gather proof himself. Court sessions continued as normal. Nobles argued over trade routes, border disputes, ceremonial traditions, politics dressed up as ritual. Danny stood at his post, silent and still, but his eyes never stopped moving. He memorized patrol timings. He watched which guards avoided eye contact. He noted which nobles whispered only when certain people passed. Patterns were forming, and patterns meant intent. During a break between sessions, Danny slipped away to the technical wing of the palace, one of the few areas where humans were allowed to work without supervision. Screens lined the walls, glowing with streams of data and communication traffic from across the empire. Ben Harper was hunched over a console, fingers flying across a translucent interface. He was the only other human stationed at the Imperial Court, officially classified as a communications consultant, though Danny suspected he spent most of his time fixing systems no one else wanted to deal with. "You look like hell," Ben said without looking up. "Let me guess, alien mattress?" "Feels like sleeping on a table," Danny replied. "I need your help." That got Ben's attention. He turned, eyes sharpening. "What kind of help?" Danny pulled out his personal device and transferred the intercepted transmission. "I caught this on an unsecured channel. I can't fully translate it, but I don't like what I see." Ben frowned as the data scrolled across his screen. He leaned closer, running it through multiple translation layers, cross-referencing dialects and encryption patterns. Minutes passed in silence. Then Ben's face drained to color. "Where did you get this?" he asked quietly. "Palace channel," Danny said. "Internal?" Ben swallowed. "That's not good." He expanded the text, highlighting certain fragments. Most of it still locked, but these words keep repeating. Attack, ascension, throne, and this, Crimson Dawn. Danny felt a cold knot tighten in his chest. "I've heard that name." "Everyone has," Ben said grimly. "They're extremists, hardliners who believe the Empress is illegitimate. They hate reform. They hate outsiders. And they especially hate humans." "How dangerous are they?" Ben didn't hesitate. "Dangerous enough to burn entire colonies to make a point." Danny straightened. "Then they're planning something during the festival." Ben nodded slowly. "That's what it looks like." "I'm going to Commander," Danny said. Ben grabbed his arm. "Be careful. You're already invisible to them. Don't give them a reason to dismiss you completely." Too late for that, Danny thought. The commander's office overlooked the inner palace grounds, lush gardens arranged with precise geometric perfection. The contrast between beauty and power made Danny uneasy. He explained everything, carefully, clearly, the intercepted message, the translation fragments. The extremist group. The timing. The commander listened with visible boredom. So he said at last, turning toward the window, "You intercepted a message you do not fully understand, translated by another human, and now believe there is a plot to assassinate the Empress during the most secure event in our history." "Yes, Commander." The commander exhaled slowly. "The Festival of Ascension has been held for over 10,000 years. We deploy thousands of guards, internal scanners, layered defenses." He turned, eyes cold. "This sounds less like intelligence and more like a human attempting to feel important." Danny clenched his jaw. "With respect, sir, I've seen this before. When threats hide behind tradition, when confidence turns into blind spots. I have commanded the Imperial Guard for 3 decades, the commander snapped. "I do not require lessons from a species that discovered spaceflight yesterday." He pointed toward the door. "Leave. And do not waste my time with this nonsense again." Danny walked out with his fists shaking. If authority wouldn't act, then responsibility fell elsewhere. Over the following days, he doubled down. He tracked cargo shipments and noticed irregularities. Containers rerouted at the last moment. Supply crates delivered to wings that didn't request them. He studied guard rotations and found brief but consistent gaps, small windows where entire corridors were left unmonitored, too precise to be accidental. On the eve of the festival, Danny was summoned somewhere unexpected, the Empress's private chambers. The room was softer than the rest of the palace. Gentle lighting, flowing designs, art that felt personal rather than ceremonial. She stood by a wide window, looking out over the city lights. "You may speak freely here," she said without turning. "You watch more carefully than anyone else in this palace." Danny hesitated. This was dangerous territory. Still, truth mattered. "Your Majesty," he said, "I believe there will be an attack during the festival. An internal one." She turned slowly. "Explain." He told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, silence filled the room. "I believe you," she said finally, "but belief is not proof. If I accuse my own guard without certainty, the court will fracture." She stepped closer. "Continue watching. If you find something undeniable, come to me immediately." As Danny left, he noticed someone standing in the corridor, a noble woman, closely related to the Empress, always smiling in public. Their eyes met. For a brief moment, her smile vanished, and Danny understood something vital. The enemy wasn't coming from outside. It was already inside the palace. The final night before the Festival of Ascension arrived wrapped in music, color, and celebration. Across the Imperial Palace, servants hurried through luminous corridors, carrying banners woven with ancient symbols. Floating lights were tested and retested, programmed to shift colors in harmony with ceremonial music. Nobles gathered in private halls, their laughter echoing as tailors adjusted robes stitched with gold and rare gems. To everyone else, it was a night of anticipation. To Danny Cole, it felt like the calm before an execution. He moved through the palace long after most guards had settled into their rotations, checking systems he technically had no authority to inspect. His military instincts screamed that something was wrong. Too many coincidences, too many overlooked details. That was when he found it. 3 sections of the internal defense grid were marked fully operational. Green indicators. Perfect diagnostics. Except they weren't. Danny knelt beside an access panel and manually ran a deep diagnostic using his personal override tools. The truth revealed itself instantly. The systems had been bypassed, not damaged, not hacked from outside, disabled from within. His stomach dropped. This wasn't a possible attack. It was a scheduled one. He checked the time. Less than 6 hours until the festival began. Danny ran. He reported what he found through official channels, again ignored. No response. No acknowledgement. The palace machine continued turning, smooth and confident, blind to blade already pressed against its throat. When the festival finally began, the throne room transformed into something unreal. Thousands of floating lights drifted through the air like living stars. Music echoed from unseen instruments, melodies older than human history. Nobles from across the empire filled the hall, their robes shimmering beneath shifting colors. At the center of it all, The Empress sat upon her throne, clad in ceremonial white. Her silver-blue skin glowed softly, and her expression was calm, but Danny noticed a tension in her posture. She felt it too. Danny stood near the great doors, as always, formal jacket pressed and immaculate. Hidden beneath it was a sidearm, unauthorized, unregistered, and absolutely necessary. The ceremony stretched on. Speeches, toasts, applause. Midnight approached. Then the lights flickered. The music cut out mid-note. For half a heartbeat, the throne room was silent, and then the palace exploded. The outer corridors erupted in fire and screams. Shock waves rippled through the floor. Energy weapon fire echoed through the walls like thunder. "Protect the Empress!" the commander shouted, drawing his blade. The Imperial Guard formed ranks before the throne as nobles panicked. Diplomats fled for emergency exits, trampling decorations and each other in terror. The great doors shook violently. Then they burst inward. Armed figures flooded the throne room, clad in crimson and black. Crimson dawn. They fired indiscriminately. Nobles fell in seconds, their elegant robes stained dark with blood. The guards met them head-on, blades clashing against energy weapons in a brutal collision. For a moment, it looked like the guard might hold. Then betrayal struck. From inside the throne room itself, guards turned on their own, blades sliding into backs, energy shots fired at point-blank range. Traitors revealed themselves in an instant, shattering the defensive line. "Fall back," the commander roared. Secondary position. But there was no secondary position. Every exit was blocked. Every contingency neutralized. The attack had been planned perfectly. Danny saw the truth as the commander hesitated. Fear disguised as strategy. "All units retreat," the commander ordered. "Regroup outside." Danny couldn't believe what he was hearing. The Imperial Guard, the finest warriors in the galaxy, ran. They fled through a side passage, dragging wounded with them. Nobles followed, desperate and screaming. In less than a minute, the throne room was nearly empty, except for one figure. The Empress stood alone on the steps of her throne. And one human. The attackers advanced slowly now, savoring the moment. Their leader stepped forward. A massive figure with scars carved deep into his face, his blade humming with lethal energy. "Your protectors have abandoned you," he said mockingly. "Your empire ends tonight." Danny stepped forward. "She's not alone." Laughter rippled through the attackers. "A human?" The leader sneered. "This is your final defender?" The Empress whispered behind him. "You should go. You don't have to die here." Danny didn't turn. "Where I come from," he said calmly, "we don't leave people behind just because the odds are bad." The leader's smile faded. "Kill him." Danny fired. The first attacker dropped instantly. Then another. Danny moved fast, using pillars and overturned furniture for cover, turning the throne room into a battlefield. He fought like he always had, outnumbered, outmatched, and unwilling to quit. Blades grazed him. Energy fire burned his leg. Blood soaked his uniform. Still he fought. He knew he couldn't win. He just needed to buy time. When his ammunition ran dry, the leader stepped forward himself, raising a massive blade. "Enough!" Danny picked up a fallen weapon, far too heavy for human hands. The blade struck him across the chest, dropping him to his knees. As the leader raised his weapon for the killing blow, the doors exploded again. The Imperial Guard returned. Shame turned into fury as they charged, overwhelming the exhausted attackers. The tide shifted in seconds. Danny collapsed. The last thing he felt was silver hands pressing against his wounds. The last thing he heard was his name. Darkness came in waves. Danny Cole drifted in and out of consciousness, unsure if minutes or days were passing. Sometimes he heard voices, soft, urgent, speaking in alien tongues he couldn't understand. Other times it was only pain, deep and constant, radiating through every part of his body like fire beneath his skin. Machines hummed around him. Something cold pressed against his chest. Light flashed behind his closed eyes. He tried to move. Nothing responded. For the first time since the battle began, fear crept in. So this is how it ends. Then a familiar voice cut through the haze. "Stay with us. Do not let him sleep. The accent was strange, the tone controlled, but Danny recognized it. The Empress. His eyes fluttered open. White light filled his vision. He was lying in a medical chamber, suspended slightly above the floor by a field of gentle energy. Transparent instruments hovered around him, projecting streams of data and pulsing lights. Every breath hurt, but the pain was distant, dulled by medication. "You are awake," the Empress said quietly, standing beside him. "How long?" Danny croaked. 3 days, she replied. "Our physicians were uncertain you would survive. Your biology is stubborn." He managed a weak smirk. "I've been told that before." Her expression softened, relief briefly breaking through her composed exterior. Dark shadows circled her eyes. She hadn't rested. "The palace still trembles from what happened," she said. "The Empire has not seen such a night in centuries." As Danny drifted in and out over the next few days, pieces of the truth came together. The Crimson Dawn had been nearly destroyed. Their leader was captured alive, his remaining followers hunted down across the capital. The traitors within the Imperial Guard were exposed. Some confessed. Others were revealed through evidence Danny had unknowingly uncovered through his investigations. And the mastermind behind it all, the Empress's own cousin, the noble woman who smiled in public and whispered in shadows, had orchestrated everything, feeding intelligence to the extremists, manipulating supply routes, engineering security gaps. She believed the Empress was too weak, too sympathetic to outsiders. She had underestimated one human. When Danny heard this, he remembered the cold look in her eyes outside the private chambers. She had known. Commander Varek, once the proud, unyielding leader of the Imperial Guard, visited Danny's medical chamber on the 5th day. The massive warrior stood silently at the foot of the bed, his armor absent, his posture heavy. "I misjudged you," he said at last. "I mistook restraint for weakness." Danny shifted painfully. "You came back." "Because of you," Varek replied. "My soldiers saw a human standing where we ran. They followed not orders, but shame." He placed a fist against his chest in a formal salute. "You have my apology and my respect." News of the battle spread faster than anyone expected across the galactic coalition. Transmissions replayed footage of the throne room. Commentators spoke of the human who held the line. Other species, once dismissive of humanity, watched in stunned silence. A single human had stood when an empire fled. Diplomatic channels ignited. Requests for alliance talks flooded in. Humanity was no longer invisible. When Danny was finally able to stand, still weak but healing, the Empress summoned him once more. She stood by the same window as before, gazing out at the city below. Unchanged, yet fundamentally different. "Our diplomats are negotiating deeper ties with your world," she said. "Trade, defense, technology, changes that would have taken decades, now happening in days." She turned to face him. "Because of you." Danny shook his head. "I didn't plan any of this." "I know," she said softly. "That is why it matters." She studied him carefully. "I have come to understand something about humans. You are not loud about your strength. You do not announce it. But when the moment comes, when everything seems lost, you act." She stepped closer. "I would like you to remain here," she continued. "Not as a symbol, not as an observer, but as my personal protector. Someone I know will stand when others fall." The offer hung heavy in the air. Danny thought of Earth, of home, of the life he thought he'd return to unchanged. Then he remembered the throne room. "I'll stay," he said. The Empress inclined her head. "Then the future begins differently than it would have." Weeks later, Danny stood beside the throne once more. This time, the room felt different. Nobles glanced at him openly now. Guards nodded in respect. Whispers followed him, but they weren't dismissive anymore. They were cautious. The galaxy had learned something important. Humans were not weak. They were patient. And when the moment came, they did not run. The Empire did not recover quietly. In the weeks following the Festival of Ascension, the Imperial Palace became the center of the galaxy's attention. News streams replayed the battle endlessly. Slowed footage of the throne room, analysis by military experts, Endless speculation about how an ancient empire had nearly fallen from within. And always, the same image appeared. One human, standing alone. Across coalition space, reactions were mixed. Some species responded with admiration, others with unease, a few with outright fear. Because if a single human could do that, what could humanity become if it ever chose to stand together? The trials of the Crimson Dawn began swiftly. Their captured leader was paraded before the Imperial Tribunal, his former confidence stripped away by defeat and public disgrace. Evidence of their conspiracy filled entire data vaults, communications, financial trails, corrupted nobles. When the Empress's cousin was brought in chains before the court, the silence was absolute. She did not plead. She did not deny it. You were going to destroy everything, the Empress said, her voice steady despite the betrayal burning behind her eyes. No, her cousin replied calmly. I was going to save it. From you. The verdict was swift. Life imprisonment beyond the Empire's core worlds, forgotten and powerless. With the traitors removed, reforms followed. Security protocols were rewritten. Guard command structures were reevaluated. Internal loyalty systems were rebuilt from the ground up. And at the heart of it all stood Danny Cole. Officially, his title became Imperial Protector Liaison, a position no human had ever held. Unofficially, he was something else entirely. A reminder. Wherever the Empress walked, Danny stood nearby, not silent now, but respected. His presence changed conversations. Nobles spoke more carefully. Guards straightened when he passed. Even Commander Varric treated him differently, often seeking his input during security briefings. You think differently, Varric admitted once. You look for what should not exist. Danny shrugged. That's how ambushes work. Human diplomats arrived soon after. They entered the palace with caution, uncertain of how they would be received. They didn't need to wonder long. Doors opened for them. Meetings were granted without delay. For the first time, humanity wasn't begging for a seat at the table. It was being invited. Ben Harper cornered Danny one evening in the technical wing, grinning like he'd won a private war. You realize you just changed human history, right? I just didn't die, Danny replied. Ben laughed. Same thing, apparently. Yet not everyone was pleased. In shadowed corners of the Empire, other extremist groups watched and learned. They studied footage of the throne room. They whispered Danny's name like a warning. Humans were no longer irrelevant. They were unpredictable, and unpredictability frightened ancient powers more than raw strength ever could. One night, weeks after the trials ended, Danny found himself standing alone on a palace balcony. The city below glowed beneath artificial starlight, endless and alive. The Empress joined him quietly. Do you regret staying? She asked. He considered the question carefully. Some days I miss home, but this feels like where I'm supposed to be. She nodded. History rarely asks permission. She turned toward him. There are those who believe you should be elevated further, given command authority. Danny stiffened. I'm not here to rule. I know, she said. That is why you are trusted. Silence stretched between them. You showed my people something, she continued. That honor is not inherited. It is chosen. Danny looked out over the city. Back home, we have a saying, courage isn't about being fearless. It's about doing what needs to be done when you're afraid. The Empress smiled faintly. Then your species is far braver than we understood. As the weeks turned into months, stories spread. On distant worlds, young beings of other species studied battle recordings and asked why the human didn't run. Military academies rewrote case studies. Historians marked the Festival of Ascension as the moment the galaxy shifted course. In an imperial palace, the throne room remained intact, scarred but standing, just like the human who had defended it. Power attracted attention. Danny Cole learned that lesson quickly. In the months following the failed coup, the imperial palace felt calmer on the surface. Yet beneath that calm ran a constant current of tension. Old enemies watched. New ones calculated. Every alliance humanity gained unsettled someone else in the galaxy. Peace, Danny realized, was often just preparation wearing a friendly face. As Imperial Protector Liaison, his responsibilities grew quietly but steadily. He reviewed security proposals, trained mixed-species guard units, and advised Commander Varric on threat assessments that didn't rely solely on brute force. Some of the guards respected him. Others resented him. A few feared him. The most dangerous ones smiled. It started with small things. A patrol arriving seconds late. A data packet delayed, without explanation. A maintenance drone rerouted through restricted airspace. Individually, they meant nothing. Together, they formed a familiar pattern. Danny stood in the observation chamber overlooking the inner defense ring, eyes locked on a rotating holographic map of the palace. "Someone's testing us," he said. Varric crossed his massive arms. "Our internal systems show no breach." "That's the problem," Danny replied. "They don't want to breach us. They want to see how we react." Before Varric could respond, an alert chimed. Unauthorized diplomatic shuttle. Origin, unknown. Clearance code, Imperial High Tier. Danny's jaw tightened. That code should be impossible to forge. Yet here we are, Varric growled. The Empress was informed immediately. The shuttle was allowed to land under heavy guard. From it emerged a delegation claiming to represent a minor outer system alliance, politely worded, impeccably dressed, and armed with flawless credentials. Too flawless. Danny stood behind the Empress during the meeting, watching their movements, their pauses, the way they avoided direct eye contact with guards but watched him instead. They knew who he was. Their leader spoke smoothly. "We come to discuss trade corridors and mutual security cooperation." Danny leaned toward the Empress. "They're lying." She didn't ask how he knew. "Proceed carefully," she murmured. The meeting ended without incident. But that night, the palace alarm screamed. Multiple systems went dark simultaneously. External sensors failed. Communication arrays flickered. Not an attack. A demonstration. Danny ran. He moved through corridors lit by emergency glow, weapon ready, instinct screaming. The palace wasn't under siege, but someone wanted to prove they could lay it bare. He reached the control nexus just in time to see a figure vanish through a maintenance shaft. Human-sized. Fast. Danny gave chase. The pursuit carried them into the understructure beneath the palace, where ancient architecture met modern technology. The intruder moved with training, military, disciplined. Danny cornered them at a sealed access door. "Don't," the intruder said calmly, raising empty hands. "If I wanted blood, you'd already be dead." Danny kept his weapon trained. "Then talk." The figure removed their helmet. Human. A woman, older than Danny, eyes sharp with experience. "My name is Mara Kessler," she said. "I work for an organization that doesn't officially exist." Danny's mind raced. "Human intelligence." She nodded. "Some of your allies want to know what kind of symbol you become." "You broke into the Imperial Palace to check on me?" "To see if you were still human," she corrected. "Or if power had changed you." Sirens faded as systems came back online. "You passed," she added. Danny stared at her in disbelief. "You could have started a war." "We prevented one," she replied. "There are forces moving against humanity already. They fear what you represent." "And what's that?" Danny asked. She met his gaze. "Proof that humans don't need dominance to change the balance. Just resolve." Security teams arrived moments later. Mara disappeared before they could reach her. The Empress listened in silence as Danny explained everything. When he finished, she spoke softly. "Trust is heavier than armor." "Yes, Your Majesty." "And you carry it well," she said. "But understand this. Your presence draws attention not only from enemies, but from your own people." Danny nodded. "I figured." That night, he stood alone in the throne room long after it emptied, staring at the marks still visible on the floor where blood had been spilled. He wasn't just protecting an empress anymore. He was protecting a future. And that future was about to be tested one final time. History does not remember numbers. It remembers moments. The Imperial Palace stood calm beneath a sky filled with distant stars. But Danny Cole felt the shift long before alarm sounded. He had learned to trust that instinct, the quiet warning that came when too many variables aligned too neatly. The final test did not come as an invasion. It came as a choice. The Galactic Coalition convened an emergency summit on Prime, drawing representatives from dozens of systems. Officially, it was about security reform and collective defense. Unofficially, it was about humanity, about fear. Ancient species, long accustomed to being unchallenged, debated in polished language whether humans should be restricted, limited in military development, contained before they became unstable. Danny stood behind the Empress as arguments filled the grand chamber. They are impulsive. They escalate conflict. They do not think in centuries. One delegate finally said what the others implied. They stood alone once. The alien said coldly, "Next time, they may decide to stand over us." Silence followed. All eyes turned to the Empress. She rose slowly. "Power is not proven by conquest," she said. "It is proven by restraint. And no species has shown more restraint than humans, despite being underestimated at every turn." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. She gestured toward Danny. "When my empire failed its duty, one human stood. Not for dominance, not for reward, but because someone needed protection." The debate ended not with a vote, but with understanding. Humanity would not be restricted. It would be watched. Danny accepted that quietly. Being watched was better than being feared. That night, he returned to the balcony overlooking the city. The Empress joined him once more. "You could return home now," she said. "Your world would welcome you as a hero." Danny looked at the stars. "Heroes belong to stories. I belong where I'm needed." She studied him. "Then history will remember you differently." He shook his head. "History doesn't need my name. Just the lesson." Years passed. The Empire stabilized. Alliances deepened. Human officers trained alongside alien warriors. The phrase "stand like a human" entered military doctrine, meaning to hold position no matter the odds. Danny aged. Scars multiplied. Hair grayed, but his resolve never softened. When he finally retired, quietly and without ceremony, the palace guards lined the corridors without being ordered to. No speeches, no medals, just respect. On his last day, he stood once more in the throne room, empty, silent. He touched the stone where he had once bled, and walked away. Long after he was gone, the story spread, told differently on every world, exaggerated, mythologized, but the core never changed. When the guards ran, the humans stayed. And because of that, the universe learned something it would never forget.